I didn't get too far because for some reason, I don't know why, it's leaking. Welcome back to Living with a Classic. I'm out in the daily driven 1975 XJ6 and just almost back home. Been for a little bit of a drive here, and I've noticed a thing after I put the other engine in, and it is that it's running a little bit hot, and it was hotter on the gauge, and I've also checked with an infrared thermometer, and it is running a little bit too hot for my liking. I'll just show you guys the gauge in a bit. You have to remember it's winter here and about 4 degrees Celsius out at the moment, and we're all the way up on the M of normal. And I checked when it's there with the infrared thermometer. That's about 101 degrees Celsius in the inlet manifold. And but the weird thing is, the water temperature that is going into the radiator is only about 80, something like that. And coming out of the radiator, we're getting about 65 or 70. So I think the radiator is working fine. You have to think everything was working fine with the other engine in here. The only thing I've done was I swapped the engine, but I didn't take the intake manifold off or the thermostat. So my guess is that's probably, I'm hoping that's something wrong with the thermostat. I am running Evans waterless coolant, so that's the only other thing I've changed, but that shouldn't make the car run warmer. I've heard that Evans car can possibly run a little bit warmer, but I mean, I haven't been pushing it, and it is very, very cold outside at the moment. Previous owner is a good friend of mine who had this engine in another car. I always thought that the gauge sat kind of high for him, and he had electric fans and stuff, and he never really measured anything of that. So it is reading high here as well. So first I was thinking maybe the sender on that, because it's the sender that he had in his car, but yeah, it is a little bit too hot. So we're gonna get back to the house. I'm gonna pull this thing into the workshop. I'm gonna have it cool down, so I'll go out probably maybe later tonight or another day and drain the coolant system, swap out the thermostat. We'll take the thermostat from the engine I took out because it's pretty much brand new, and I know that it works. I know that it's the correct 88 degree thermostat, and I knew that it held that. And when I had that car, then the temperature would read between the N and the O of normal. So we'll put that thing back in. I'll have some new gaskets, and hopefully that will solve the issue. Otherwise, we gotta continue investigating. Just came back to the house. As you can see, it is all the way on the M there. I mean, I have full heat on, and it's very, very cold outside, so definitely running a bit too hot. It's a little while later. Everything is cooled down, and I've drained about half of the coolant system, so the level should be pretty low. That's where the thermostat is. You see the brake right there in the housing. It's one bolt there, one there, and a long one that goes through to the other one. I do have that gasket as well, but I hopefully don't need to take that off, but because yeah, looks fine. So I'm just going to try and replace that gasket. So what I've left to do is to remove the top hose, loosen up the bypass hose. There's a hose that goes under here down to the water pump for when the coolant is circulating before the thermostat opens, and it's just these bolts, and it should come out. I have loosened up one bolt in the back here before it hitting play. That's the long one in the back, just because it's quite annoying to get to and takes a while to get off, but I think it's pretty much all the way out. It's very, very long. I think it's actually threaded out, but it just needs to get pulled out of there. So I'm going to start with these two overflow hoses. There we go. We'll put those out of the way. Then we have the top hose here. I'm going to try just loosening it in one on this end. Now onto the two remaining bolts. One there and one down there. So I'll loosen all those up now. wiggle this out of place and we'll have a look at the thermostat that's in there. A lot of wiggling later, and I think we're pretty much there now. So the problem is always the same with these. You have this long bolt here, and it's only threaded a little bit all the way in there, but when you get it to about here, there's usually a bunch of debris on here, and it's hard to get it to continue out. So I have to force that hose off, bend this whole thing over, and then I could finally get it out. But this is just a housing we'll put to the side. We'll replace that gasket, get that off. I have a new one, but we want to look at the thermostat in there. That hose still looks fine. And here is the thermostat. Let's see what it says on it. 88 degrees. I think it looks exactly the same as the one I'm putting in. Let's put this down here and get the new one. Here is a new one. And it looks exactly the same. I mean, it could be something wrong with the other one causing it not to open fully. Because the weird thing is, these should be opening at around 88 degrees, and a little bit warmer than that, they should be fully open, which means you should get a lot of flow through the top hose. I'm not getting that. It's, I can have 101 degrees over here, and this thing will feel still rather cold. Like a little bit warm up here, but not as warm as the intake manifold. So I hope by switching this out will solve the issue. I'm just going to clean up the surface here, put this in, and a new gasket, and we should be on our way. The new thermostat is in place, and I have a new gasket on here. Put some Hylimer blue on there. If you've been following the channel, you know how much I love this stuff. It just works very well. So let's try and get all this together. Maybe. Yeah, let's see. Okay, that's one way to try and fix the issue. Put that back in, and put those back on. And there we go. Gotta get that gasket correctly in place. There is one bolt. And I just remember the shiny one was on the bottom. And make sure it goes back in the same place, just because the threads are quite old. I mean, this engine is an early Series 1 engine. So it's probably 50 years old. So I'm just going to be really careful with all the threads. That one, and let me get the long bolt. And there we go. That's the long one in place. Just going to start it off a couple of turns. Got a couple turns on the back one. Make sure it's working correctly. And we'll tighten up the ones up here, or not tighten them up, but snug them up at least. It's all back together. However, it is very late here, so I'm gonna head inside, and then tomorrow we'll fill up the coolant system again, fire this thing up, and see if it's still running hot. I hope it's not. I hope this has solved the issue. Another reason I want to let it sit overnight is, even though Hylimer doesn't really like cure, it stays soft, you can use it right away. I like to let it sit, overnight before I fill it up. It's just something I like to do. So until tomorrow, fingers crossed that this will solve the issue. It's the next day, and I'm just pouring in the last of the coolant. It's once again, I'm using Evans waterless coolant. Bit of an experiment, see what I think of it. And I just overfilled that. Let's see how she fires up. Too bad. I'm just gonna fill up a little bit more of the coolant, put the caps on, and we'll let this thing warm up. I didn't get too far because for some reason, I don't know why, it's leaking. It's leaking from right there. So either I damaged the gasket putting it back together, or the thermostat maybe slid down a bit and it's not, I don't know. But anyways, gotta drain the coolant, take it all apart, and well, I'll show you guys what I'll find. Okay, I'll have that off, and as expected, it was completely my fault. So when putting that back on, I didn't check that the thermostat didn't slide down when I tried to wiggle everything in place. It slid down, and it cut part of the gasket. So it's supposed to be like this. Don't mind the wood on there. I'll tell you what that's all about in a little bit. And a bit of the gasket fell away and started leaking. Of course, I don't have an extra, but I did have some gasket paper, and I made what I think is a pretty good replica. I think it will fit well. So put some Hylimer on that. I will also take a spare thermostat. I have another new one because this one got a little bit squished right here. So I don't think it will hurt it, but we'll put a new one in anyways. Put that new gasket in. I'll tighten everything back up once more, everything in, fill up the system. And hopefully this time it will work. It's been running for a while now. Got everything together, of course, and filled up with coolant. And temperature is starting to show up on the gauge. So I thought we'd get my infrared thermometer and see what temperatures we have. I really just want to see at what temperature the thermostat opens. So right now we're at about 68 degrees Celsius in the intake, and about 22 there in the top hose. So when that reaches about 86, 88, something like that, it should open up, and we should be about N on the gauge at that point. Just passed over 80 degrees, we're at 82 now. Let's check what that is on the gauge. And that is pretty much, yeah, between the N and the O. So it may be that sender is also a little bit different than the one I had in the car before. And we're getting 86, 77. I'm going to feel with my hand. That's starting to feel warm. And the top hose is starting to get a little bit of heat in it. I mean, it's still very cold to the touch, but definitely I think the thermostat is starting to open. And the idle is coming down now as well. I'm starting to feel warmth in that hose now. I mean, yeah, 30, 40 degrees. I definitely think the thermostat is starting to open, and we have 88 degrees here before the thermostat and about 80 after it. And we'll check just for fun the bottom hose. It should be very, very cold at the moment. I am starting to feel some warmth coming off the radiator fan. Yeah, and that is just 26 degrees. and we are between the R and the M of normal. So let's go for a little brief test drive, and I'll put the air filter on, of course, go for a drive, and we'll see what temperature we have when we get back. Just pulled around the building. It's been sitting here for a while I locked up the house, and we're sitting between the O and the R on the gauge about, and it went down as soon as I sort of pulled out. So I think there was probably some air bubbles in there getting out. Sitting here idling, had the heater on, and it's very nice and toasty in here. So water seems to be circulating fine, and everything else is working. So we'll do my little, I call it drive around the block. There's a little route here around the farms where I live, and keep an eye on temperature gauge. It's already a lot lower than it was before. It's actually warmer today than when we tried this last time. It's almost 3 or 4 degrees warmer outside. Sun's trying to look out, so I think we're gonna do well. I'll turn you guys around so you can see some of the view out here. You can see it's quite a miserable and gray January here, and I for one am very, very ready for spring. We'll take a right here. We'll go to where I usually like to take pictures of this car, over here in the forest. Yeah, pulling well. Right now we are pretty much at the R on the gauge, and I'm not expecting it to be exactly the same. I mean, thermostats are not all created equally, nor are temperature sender units. So these gauges are not like the old-fashioned or like the new ones where it sits on the end or of normal for like a, in the middle of the gauge. It just sits there for a wide range of temperatures. It moves around quite a bit. That's why there's a big normal range, and everything is not calibrated. But I know where this car usually sat, and it wasn't as high as before. And when it was that cold outside, we should not have had 101 degrees in the coolant. So we're gonna take this trip around here. It was the exact same trip I took before, and yeah, I got it quite warm then. But yeah, we're coming up to my favorite spot over here. Can't wait to go out here and film again when it's spring. I just love pulling up in the car up here. All these trees here, and everything is green and beautiful. And right now it's a little sad and gray. But we'll continue driving, and I'll let you guys know what it's like when we get back. Back at the house now, temperature's been behaving really well. There's been some slight movement, but that's really normal. It's the correct movement I want to see. When the thermostat opens, goes down a little bit, goes up, goes down a tiny bit. Like, we're talking just like tiny movements. But it's been looking really good, and right now it's sitting rock steady around the R. Let me show you guys. So it's sitting right there, kind of right at the R, a little bit towards the M, but mostly at the R. I was looking at some pictures on my phone, and before it was between the M and the A, all the time. One thing that's really nice though is the oil pressure. I mean, when I was driving the whole time, I wasn't going very fast at some point. So let's say I was just holding, that RPM right there, 1200 RPMs, and pretty much the whole time we're up at pretty much 40 pounds. So that's really, really good. But now let's go out and see what this actually means in the temperature in real life with the temperature gauge. We'll start over here, and we're getting about 88, 90 degrees. Yeah, colder at the back of the, no, about the same, 88, 90. Top hose, 75. So thermostat is pretty much closed at the moment. That's all working really well, and we should see a pretty low temperature coming out of the radiator. Yeah, about 50 degrees or something. I mean, I haven't driven it that hard, and it's pretty cold outside. So definitely working as it should now. I think before we just had a bad thermostat, or one that would not open fully, because it was running 10, 15 degrees warmer than this. Yeah, it's sitting here right now, 94. I think that's completely okay. It's just sitting idling. 90. So I'm guessing the thermostat is opening up right now. Yeah, I'm seeing 94 there as well. Just for fun, let's have a look at what the gauge looks like. Yeah, rock steady between the R and the M. And let's shut her down. Okay, really happy with that. Just a simple fix because I really wanted to keep trying Evans because I really like the idea of, especially in an engine like this one, it's 50 years old. It has dissimilar metals in it, aluminum head, cast steel block, all of that. Not having any water in there is really good. I also like that it can handle heat better, and I also really like that it doesn't build any pressure. So all those things are good, and the thing I actually really like the most is it's not poisonous. I live on a farm here. We have a lot of animals and cats and dogs and things, and if this spills, something happens, at least I know I won't kill an animal if they eat it. So I really do like the product, and it really just seemed like it was a thermostat issue. But as soon as I was looking online on Evans and heat issues, it seems like a lot of people were worried that their cars were overheating due to the product. And I think that's weird because it wouldn't be selling as that well if that was the issue. Then, of course, you have different thermostats. But the thing about a thermostat is it doesn't regulate the maximum temperature in your coolant system. So if you're having a bad coolant system or a bad clogged radiator, putting in a lower thermostat, it's not going to fix that. The reading on the thermostat is really just the lowest temperature the engine will go at. So I have an 88 degree right now. So the lowest that the engine will go at is about 88 degrees. And as you saw when I came back from the drive, when there'd been, airflow and things going through the engine, it was about 88 degrees in the inlet manifold. Then when it sat for a bit now, it went up to 94, thermostat fully open. It's probably going to go down to hover there around 90 when idling. Might be a little bit warmer on a hot day. So maybe if I was running in a hot climate with this car, maybe I'd have the 82 degree thermostat. But I'm going to run the 88 because this is mostly a winter, fall, and spring car for me. When it's really hot in the summer, I think I'll be driving some of the other cars because they have AC. This one does not. So all I really care about is really good heat in this car. And an 88 degree thermostat will make sure I have more heat in the car than 82. And as long as the car doesn't overheat, I think it should be fine. Anyways, okay, rant over. Just want to explain because some people get confused a bit by thermostats. Anyways, I hope you guys liked this video and also saw that, if you mess up a gasket, it can happen. You can often make a new one. It's one of the best investments I've made is that little piece of gasket materials about the size of an A4 paper. I bought that years ago, and it saved me so many times on the weekend when I don't either have a gasket, I can't get the gasket, or something happens to the gasket, or I'm not happy with a new gasket. I think it's way too thin and not nice. Then I can always make my own, and so far that's always worked really well. Anyways, if you like this video, please give a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.